If you want to learn how to retouch beauty shot or headshot image, make sure to watch this video to the end, because in this video I'm going to be explaining in details the step-by-step process on how I retouch beauty image, and we're going to be using the focus separation method and also the micro dodge and burn method. So let's jump into Photoshop right now. Welcome to my Photoshop. This image right here was shot by an amazing photographer called Slammy Photography. I'll be leaving his Instagram handle in the description below so you guys can go check him out. Now the first thing I'm going to be doing, once my image is on Photoshop, I'm going to duplicate my layer by clicking on Ctrl J or Command J if you are using a Mac. And after I duplicate my layer, I'm just going to first of all work on the stray hair. So as you can see right now, we have stray hair which we need to remove. And there are different methods which you can use to remove your stray hair on your image, but I'm going to use the quickest and easiest method which you can use. So all you have to do is create a new empty layer, pick your normal brush tool, make sure you are using a soft round brush, and after that press alternate on your keyboard, sample from a close by area and just brush on the hair. Since this is a black background, you're not going to see the difference. So if you have a background that is not dark like this one right here, all you have to do is pick your close stamp tool, and for your sample, make sure your current and below layer is checked. So once you check it, just press alternate to sample from a close by area and just paint over the hair like that. Sample and just paint, sample and just paint, sample and just paint like that. But because this background is dark, I'm not going to be using this method. I'm just going to pick my normal brush tool, sample from the dark background and just brush over it like that to remove the stray hair. So that's what I'm going to do. Remember to always press alternate on your keyboard to sample from a close by area. If you sample from an area which is not dark like this, yeah, and you just paint it, see what's happening to the image, it's not going to make it look good. So make sure you are sampling from a close by area and just paint like that. And for this one, it doesn't matter if your foreground color is set to white or black. Even if you set to white, you can just sample and it's going to turn to black and just paint like that. So if you are doing the edges, make sure you are extra careful so you don't brush on the skin. And you can increase and decrease your brush size with your square bracket key. So I'm just going to decrease my brush size and just brush like this. So I want to remove all the hair right here because I really don't want them. So you can see we've successfully removed those stray hair right there. So this is the before and this is the after. The before and the after. Another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pick my mixer brush tool. So I just come to my toolbar again and just pick my mixer brush and just use this to paint on the edge. So I'm just going to brush on the edges just to smoothen it out and make it look natural and look good. So I'll do the same thing for this side right here. So these are before and these are after. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to merge this layer and this one together. So I'm just going to hold Ctrl and click on this down layer and right click and just click on merge layer, and I'm going to merge the layers like that. So before and after. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the blemishes. So you can say this image doesn't really have a lot of blemishes. To remove blemishes from an image, there are different ways which you can use to remove blemishes from your image, and every photographer or retoucher has their own method which works for them. But for me, I prefer using the focus separation method to remove blemishes from my image, and I'm going to show you how to use the focus separation method to remove blemishes from your image. So to use the focus separation method to remove blemishes from your image, all you have to do is load your focus separation action if you have any, but I use this retouching academy to retouch my image. So I'm just going to load the focus separation of this retouching academy and click on focus separation via Gaussian blur. And for this image, I'm going to be using 20 to retouch this image because the image has a lot of texture. I want to retain more texture on the image. And if you want to learn how to get the right focus separation blur radius, I have a video for that. I'll be leaving the link to that video in the description below. So make sure to go watch that video if you want to learn how to get the right focus separation blur radius. So I'm going to click on 20 and click on OK. And after running the action, we successfully separate the high frequency and the low frequency. And the high frequency consists of the texture, while the low frequency consists of colors. And to remove the blemishes, all you have to do is click on the texture copy because the blemishes are texture, while all the skin tones right here are under the low frequency because it consists of the colors. So to remove the blemishes, just make sure your texture layer is selected, pick your close stamp tool, and just make sure current layer is selected. You know, before we change this one to current and below, so right now just change it back to current layer and just sample from a close by area and just brush over the blemishes. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, press alternate on your keyboard to sample and just paint over the blemishes alternate to sample and just paint like that. If this place is on current and below and I try to sample and paint, you're going to see what's going to happen to the image. So once I click on sample and just paint, you can see it's not making the image look good because this place right here is set to current and below. So I'm just going to undo that by clicking on Ctrl Z to undo and change it back to current layer. And for my brush size, I'm using a soft round brush for this one. If you're using a hard brush, make sure to change to a soft round brush. And my mood is set to normal, my opacity is set to 100, my flow is set to 100, align is checked, and make sure your sample is set to current layer and you're working on your high texture layer. So just hold alternate to sample and brush like that to remove blemishes. Alternate sample and brush just like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing for this image. You can see this image doesn't really have a lot of blemishes, so I'm just going to keep clicking alternate to sample from a close by area and just paint like that. Alternate to sample and just paint like that. Just make sure you remove the blemishes because this is what's going to make the image stand out, because this image looks smooth already. Just focus on the blemishes. So if you have an image like this, make sure you focus more on removing the blemishes. Okay, now let's see our before and after. So these are before and these are after. Let me just zoom in so you can see. These are before and these are after. As you can see, we remove the blemishes on this image. So after getting rid of the blemishes for this image, next thing I'm going to do my micro dodge and burn. And micro dodge and burn simply means I'm going to make the dark part of the image a little bit brighter, while the bright part of the image a little bit darker, more like blending the skin to make it look even. So let me show you how to do it in Photoshop right now. So let's get back into Photoshop. So to do your micro dodge and burn, if you don't have this retouching academy, let me just show you how to do it from scratch. So just come to your adjustment layer. If you can't find adjustment layer up here, you can come down here, adjustment layer right here, and click on your curves adjustment layer, and just bring this midtones down a little bit like this. And I'm just going to rename this one burn. And I'm going to create another curves adjustment layer again and just bring this part up like this. And I'm going to rename this one dodge like that. So after that, I'm just going to come to my burn. I'm going to invert it by clicking on Ctrl I to invert. I'll do the same thing for my burn, Ctrl I to invert like that. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a check layer so that I can see where to dodge and where to burn. And to create the check layer, all I have to do is come to my adjustment layer, and first of all I'm going to click on black and white. So once I turn this image to black and white, I'm just going to pull down the reds like this. And after I pull out the reds, I'll go back to my adjustment layer again. I'll create a levels adjustment layer, and I'm just going to push my midtones inside a little bit like this to make it look even more darker, so I can see where to dodge and where to burn, just to even it out like this. So I feel it's okay like this. There are other check layer you can use, like the invert check layer, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using this method right here. So I'm going to group this check layer by clicking on Control, click on Ctrl G, and I can just rename this one check layer. Let me check layer like that. And for my dodge and burn, I'm just going to group them, click on Ctrl G and rename it D and B, which is dodge and burn. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to make the parts that are dark a little bit brighter and the parts that are bright a little bit darker, just to even it out like I said earlier. And I'll just come to my dodge and burn group, and I'll come to my dodge, pick my normal brush tool, and just reduce my flow to about 2%. My opacity is set to 100, my flow is set to 2%, my smoothing is set to 10, and that's the setting I'm going to be using. And I'm using a soft round brush. And you can also check the edge of your brush by clicking on this brush right here. So make sure the edge of your brush is smooth so that you won't have rough edges. And I'm going to show you how I got to that settings just now. So just click on this place right here, and it's going to take you to these settings right here. And make sure this smoothing is checked and protect texture is checked. So I'm just going to hide it right now and reduce my brush size. You can see this part right here are looking dark. I'm just going to brighten it up a little bit like that with my dodge. Make sure your foreground color is set to white, and I'm just going to brighten this part that are looking dark with my dodge. So I'm just going to dodge it a little bit to make it brighter like that, just to make it match with the existing colors right there. And if it is too much, I'm just going to come to my burn, and I'm just going to burn it a little bit like that. So let me quickly show you the before and after of what we just did. So you can see how dark this particular place is. So this is the before, and this is the after. Before and after, you can see it's looking a little bit brighter now, and they're looking even. So before and after. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the whole of this image. I'm going to be dodging the dark part, and I'm going to brighten the dark part. So let me on my check layer again, and just come to my dodge, and just this time reduce my flow to 2% again. So this micro dodge and burn process actually takes a lot of time. That's why many people prefer using focus separation. A lot of professional photographers use micro dodge and burn to retouch almost all their headshots. But for me, I prefer using the both method because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing micro dodge and burn. If I just do a little bit of micro dodge and burn, I'm going to complement it with focus separation. That's why I prefer using the both methods to retouch my image. So I'm just going to continue doing my micro dodge and burn right now. I'm just going to make the dark part a little bit brighter and the bright part a little bit darker, just to give it that even look. So let's see our before and after. These are before and these are after. Our before and after. You can see the image is looking smoother now. Our before and after. Our before and after. Now, the next thing I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to delete my check layer and do my focus separation. And I'm just going to come to my Retouching Academy again and run my focus separation via Gaussian blur and use a blur radius of 20 to retouch this image. And I'll just pick my mixer brush tool. So come to my toolbar, pick my mixer brush tool. And for my mixer brush, I'm using a soft round brush and I'm using a clean brush. Make sure this place is checked. Make sure your weight is set to 20. Your low is on 20, your mix is on 10, your flow is on 20, while this percent right here is set to 0. And make sure sample or layer is checked if you are using the Retouching Academy focus separation via Gaussian blur or via medium blur. Or if you are using any focus separation that has an empty layer, make sure sample or layer is checked. If you want to learn more about mixer brush settings, I have a video for that, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. So make sure to check that video as well. So once I pick my mixer brush and once I confirm my settings, I'll just turn off this high frequency texture right here, and the image is going to be kind of blurry like this, and I'm just going to paint on the highlight separately and brush on the shadow separately. So if you want to use your mixer brush, make sure you are brushing on the highlight separately, make sure you are brushing your shadow separately, make sure you're also brushing on the midtones separately. Let me just quickly show you that with another new empty layer. So I'll just pick normal brush tool right now. So let me go back to my normal brush tool. And this place right here are my shadows. Let me put my flow back to 100%. So this part right here are my shadows. I'm going to be brushing them separately like this. I'm going to be brushing the shadow part separately, and this part right here are my highlights. I'm going to be brushing my highlights part separately. This part right here are my highlights. And also I'm going to be brushing my midtones separately. So this part right here are my midtones. I'm going to be brushing them separately. This part right here are my midtones. I'm just going to be brushing them separately like that. And I'm going to smoothen out the transition between the midtones and the highlights and the shadows like that as well. So let me just quickly do that. So if you want to brush, don't just brush roughly on the image. Make sure you are targeting the midtones separately. Make sure you are targeting the highlights separately, and make sure you are targeting the shadows separately. So I'll come back to my corrective tool, pick my mixer brush tool again. So once I pick my mixer brush tool again, hide my high texture copy, and just remember to increase and decrease your brush size according to the parts you want to retouch. If you just use a big brush size to retouch the image, it's not going to make the image look good. But make sure if you want to brush a particular place, make sure you reduce the brush size and just brush according to the shape or according to the size of the particular place which you want to work on. So right now I'm just going to use my mixer brush to work on this image right now. So I'm going to start with this highlight right here. I'm going to reduce my mixer brush a little bit and just brush on these highlights separately right here like this. And also I'll come to the shadows, just brush on it separately like this. And for the transition, I'm just going to transition it like this to make it look even smoother and even. So that's how I'm going to be brushing this image. I'll come to my midtones again and just brush my midtones separately. You can see I'm increasing and decreasing my brush size according to the parts which I am actually working on. So since I want to work on this highlight right here, I'm going to decrease my brush size and just work on this highlight here according to the highlight size. I'm going to work on the transition as well, and work on this transition as well like that, just to make the transition look a little bit smoother and sweet. So that's what I'm going to be doing for this image. So let me quickly show you the before and after of what I just did, so you can have an idea what I'm going to be doing for this image. So this is the before and this is the after. You can see we still, let me just zoom in. You can see we still have our highlight. We still have our highlights right here. We still have our midtones, and the transition is even smoother. But if you just brush anyhow, you are going to brush the shadows into the highlight, or the midtones into the highlight, or the highlights into the shadow, and just going to make the image look bad. It's not going to give the image that sweet look. So that's what I'm going to be doing for this image. I'm just going to be brushing the highlight separately, shadow separately, and the midtones separately. And I'm going to be increasing and decreasing my brush size. It's very important to increase and decrease your brush size, because brush size is very important when using your brush. So make sure you are actually using the right brush size for the particular place which you are working on. Okay, now we can see our before and after. This is our before and this is our after. You can see how good this image is looking. Wow. This is our before and this is our after. Our before and after. And I can choose to remove any blemishes if I have still seen any blemishes. So I'm seeing this white dot right here, which I don't really like. So I'm just going to my high texture, copy, pick my close stamp tool, sample, and just to remove it, because I feel it's distracting. I don't really want it right there. So I'm just going to observe my image again and see if I want to remove any blemishes from any part of the image. And I think I like it like this, and we are good to go like this. Maybe remove one here and also remove this ones right here. So after doing my focus separation, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to even out the skin tone for this image. It's time to ask you guys to like this video. If this video has been helpful to you, make sure to give the video a like so that more people can see this video and also learn from this video as well. Thank you. So after doing my focus separation, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to even out the colors on the skin of the model. I just want the skin color to look as even as possible. So let me show you guys how to do that in Photoshop right now. To make the skin color look even, all you have to do is come to your adjustment layer, click on gradient map, and click on the gradient right here, and click on your basic, change it to this one right here, which is called foreground to background, and click on OK. Then come to this method, change it to classic. Once you change it to classic, invert your layer mask by clicking on Ctrl I or Command I on your keyboard. After that, make sure your gradient is selected. Once the gradient is selected, click on the gradient right here. It's going to open this place again, and just click on the middle right here to add midtones to it. So just click on it, and it's going to add a new slider. So just make sure the slider is set to 50, because 50 is midtone. So once you get that, this place right here is called our shadows. This place right here is our midtones, while this place right here is our highlights. So for the shadows, I'm just going to double click on this color right here. I'm going to sample any shadow color which I want all the shadow to look like. So I want my shadows to look like this particular place right here. Let's say here. So I'm going to click on it, and I'll click on OK. While for my midtones, I want my midtones to look like these midtones right here on our forehead, like that. And for my highlights, I want my highlights to look like this one on our cheek right here. So I'm going to click on it. And right now we have our midtone color. So right now we have our shadows color, we have our midtones color, and we have our highlights color. And I'm going to click on OK. Then I'll come back to my layer mask right here and pick my normal brush tool. Make sure my foreground color is set to white. And I'm just going to paint on the image like that. You can see it's not looking good right now. It's because we did not change the blend mode. But we're going to change the blend mode after. So I'm just going to paint on the image like this. The reason why I leave it on normal is because I can see where I'm painting on, so it's clearly visible. That's why I leave the blend mode on normal right now, but I'm going to change the blend mode after. But let's leave it on normal for now. So we are only brushing on the skin. We are not brushing on the mouth. We are not brushing on the eyes. We are not brushing on the hair, just the skin. That's what we are working on right now. Okay, now after that, what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to come to my blend mode and change the blend mode to color like this. And once I change the blend mode to color, you can see it's looking a lot better, but it's still not looking natural. So what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to come here and just reduce the opacity a little bit. So let's say let's leave it at 30. Let's see what 30 look like. Okay, I think 30 looks fine. And now let's see our before and after. These are before and these are after. You can see how even the skin tone are looking right now. So this is our before and these are after. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to come to this my feather and just feather it to about, let's say 4. Feather is by 4 pixels and we are good to go. So This is our before and this after. Our before and after. So that's how you can even out your skin tone in Photoshop. Now, next I'm going to do right now, I'm going to do my contour dodge and burn for this image. So let's go back to Photoshop and show you how to do the contour dodge and burn. So to do your contour dodge and burn, all you have to do is run your dodge and burn action. If you don't have one, you can create from scratch, but I'm just going to run the Retouching Academy Focus Separation Dodge and Burn action because I have everything I need here. So I'm going to click on Dodge and Burn Curves and it's just going to run the action for me. And I'm just going to delete this visual aid because I don't need it. And I'll open my Dodge and Burn layer. And for my dodge, I'll just pick my normal brush tool, make sure my flow is set to 100. So for my contour dodge, but what I'm simply going to do, I'm just going to make the highlights on the image a little bit brighter, while the shadows on this image a little bit darker to add that 3D dimension to this image. To do that, I'll first of all come to my dodge. I'm just going to run a cycle like this on the highlights and just put something inside like this. That's for my highlight. And I'll do the same thing for this highlight. Same thing for this highlight like this. And I'll do the same thing for this highlights like this. And for the nose, I'm just going to draw a little bit of stroke for the nose. And for the lips, I'll do the same thing for the lips. I want to make the lips a little bit brighter as well to make it stand out like that. And I think I'll do the same thing here. And a little bit of dodge there like that. While for the shadows, I'm just going to come to the nose, the side of the nose. I'm just going to burn it a little bit. So I'm just going to draw a line like this. And for this side, I'm just going to draw another line. And for this side, I'm just going to run it like this, just to make it pop like that. And I'm just going to, okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for the down of the neck like this. Okay. Now what I'm going to do next, I'll come back to my highlight. I think I'm just going to make this place bright. So after doing all that, under my properties, I'm going to see feather right here. I'm just going to move my feather slider inside like this. For the dodge, I'm just going to move my feather slider inside like this until I feel it's okay. So I feel it's okay like this, and I'll do the same thing for the shadows. Move my feather slider inside for the shadows like that until everything blends like that. Okay, let's see. Okay, now let's see our before. These are before, these are after, these are before, these are after. But I feel the shadow is too much, so I'm just going to come to my shadows and just reduce the opacity a little bit because I feel it's too much. But the highlights looks okay, but the shadow is too much, so I'll just reduce the opacity to about 50%. So these are before and these are after. These are before and these are after. You can see how poppy this image is looking. So after doing my contour dodge and burn, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make the eyes white. So let me show you in Photoshop right now how to do that. So now that in Photoshop, I already have an action for that. So I'll just come to my actions and click on eyes and teeth. And I'm just going to zoom in, pick my normal brush tool, and make sure my foreground color is set to white. And I'm just going to bring my flow to 100, opacity 100. I'm using the soft one brush. I'm just going to brush on the white part of the eyes only, like that. And I'll see if I can brush on the teeth. Let's see. Okay. Feel it's looking good like this. So these are before and these are after. I don't want it to be too much. I want my image to look as natural as possible. So before and after. I feel it's too much. I'm just going to reduce the opacity a little bit. Like the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to make the eyes pop a little bit. And to do that, I'll just come to my adjustment layer, click on my curves adjustment, and just going to push my curves up like this. And just invert the layer by clicking on Ctrl I, and just come to this part of the eyes right here and just paint on it with my normal brush tool, opacity 100, flow 100, and just brush on it like that. But I'm not going to brush in on the dark part of the eyes. I'm just going to brush in on this side and also the catch light like that. And I'll do the same thing for these other eyes. I'll paint on the catch light and I'll paint on the colors right here. And after that, I'll come to my adjustment, click on brightness and contrast adjustment layer, and just clip it to that curves adjustment layer which I made, and just increase the contrast a little bit to that. So let's see the before and after. I'm just going to group them. So let's see the before and after. This is the before, this is the after, this is the before, and this is the after. You can see how bright the eyes is and how catchy it is right now, or before and after. If you feel it's too much, you can just reduce the opacity, which I'm going to do right now. Reduce opacity to about 60% or 70, and before and after. So I like this image. So next I'm going to do right now, I want to make this part of the hair a little bit darker. So I'll just come to my adjustment layer, click on curves adjustment layer, come to default, click on darker RGB, and just invert the layer by clicking on Ctrl I, and just paint only on the part which I want to be dark. So I want this part right here to be dark. I'm just going to paint on it to make it dark like that. Okay, now you can see our before and after, our before and after. What I'm going to do right, I'm just going to feather it to make it blend. I think I'm going to use 10 just to blend it. So before and after. After that, I think I'm still going to make this eyebrows right here a little bit darker. So I'll just come to my adjustment layer, pick my curves adjustment layer again, come to my darker RGB, invert the layer mask, and just paint only on this part right here just to make them dark. Like this, and also for this side as well. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to fit. I'm just going to feather it a little bit, so I think it's okay like this. And we can see the before and the after, before and after, and maybe reduce the opacity a little bit as well. So I like it like this. You can see how good this image is looking right now. Before and after, before and after. But I still feel the contour I did for this shadow is still too much, so I'll come back to my dodge and burn and just reduce the shadows contour a little bit. Okay, now I feel it's looking good like this. Now next I'm going to do, I'm going to be color grading this image, and to color grade this image I'm going to be using camera raw to color grade this image. So I'm just going to create a stamp visible layer by clicking on Ctrl Shift Alternate E or Command Shift Alternate E to create a stamp visible layer. And then I'm going to convert this layer to a smart filter. So I come to filter, I click on convert for smart filter. So once on my camera, what I'm going to do next, I'll just come to this feature right here. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to select only my subject. I'll click on select subject. So once I select my subject, I'm just going to come to my exposure. I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter so that I can differentiate it from the background. So I'm going to add a little of brightness to my subject like this. I think plus 10, plus 5 is okay. So I'm going to leave my subject like this. So next I'm going to do, I'll create another mask again. This time I want to work on the background. I want to make the background a little bit darker. So I'll just invert it by clicking on this place right here to invert. So right now the background is selected. So I'm just going to reduce the exposure of the background to make it even more darker like that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little bit of blues to the shadows like this. And next I'm going to do, I'll come back to my overall adjustment with capture one, and I'll just come to my let's say color mixer. Once I'm on my color mixer, I'm just going to play with the hue and saturation of this image. I feel the skin of this model is looking good already, so I'm not really going to do much for the skin because the skin is looking good already. I love the skin. So I'm just going to come to the luminosity. For the oranges, I'm just going to add a little of brightness to the oranges, and also for the reds, I'm going to add a little of brightness to the reds like that. And also for the yellows, add a little brightness to the yellows. And come to my saturation. I'm just going to I want to make the leaves look a little bit more saturated. So I'll come to my reds. I'm just going to increase the reds on the leaves, on the image like that. Just to make the leaves look a little bit saturated. So we can see our before and after, our before and after. And I think it's looking good like this. Maybe I'll reduce saturation a little bit for the reds. And let's go to the hue and see. For the hue, I'm just going to move the hue towards the yellow side a little bit. I think it's good like this. Okay, and this part to this side like this. Alright, I feel I like this color grading like this, so I'm going to leave this color grading like this. So these are before and these are after. Are before and after. I'm going to click on OK. So this before our capture one, this after our capture one. If you feel the effect to do the capture one is too much, you can just come here and just reduce the opacity a little bit. So I'm going to reduce this one to 90 like that, and I like it like this. Now the last thing I'm going to be doing for this image before I save it, I'm going to use noise to add a little bit of texture to this image, just to blend the textures, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now in Photoshop. So let's get back to Photoshop. So to use noise to blend the skin texture to make it look uniform, all you have to do is create a new layer. So just come to your layer and click on new empty layer, then come to your edit, click on fill and fill with 50% gray, and just click on OK. After that, you come to your filter, you come to your noise, you come to your add noise. So you can use a radius of about 10 to 20, whichever you want, but for the sake of I'm going to be using 20, and make sure uniform is checked and monochrome is checked, and just click on OK. After that, come to your blend mode and just change the blend mode to soft lights. And if I zoom in, you can see we have noise on the image, but that's not all we are going to be doing. The next thing we are going to do, you come back to your filter again, you come back to your stylize and click on your emboss. And for your emboss, since the light from this image is coming from the right side of this image, just make sure this angle right here is set to the side which the light is coming from. But if the light is coming from the left hand side, make sure your angle is set to the left hand side. But since this light is coming from this right hand side, I'm just going to move my arrow to the right hand side and leave it like that. And make sure your height is set to 5 or 6. I think I'm going to leave mine in 5. And your amount, you can choose to use any amount you want, but I think you use a high amount. So I think 132 works for me. Let's see. Okay, I think 132 works for me, and I'm going to click on OK. So if I zoom in, you are going to see how smooth this image is looking right now. So you can see the texture on the image. So this is the before. You can see this is the before, and this is the after. You can see the texture are blended right now and they are looking sweet. We're not going to stop right here. We're going to take it a step further. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'll come to my filter, I'll come to my blur, and I'll click on Gaussian blur. And I'm just going to blur this with of about 6 or 4. Let's see 4 or 6. Let's use 6. I'm going to use 6 for this image. And I'll click on OK. And right now, if I zoom, you can see they are blended right now. So these are before and this is after. And I can choose to add sharpen if I want, or I can choose to leave it like this, but I think I'm just going to add a little bit of sharpen to this image. So I'll come to my retouching academy, I'll click on sharpen, and I'm just going to reduce the sharpness to this image to about let's say 15 or 10. Let's say 10. Let's use 10, sharpness of 10, and before and after. Now I'm just going to save my image, and to save my image, all I have to do is click on Ctrl Shift Alternate S, and it's going to show save for web. Or you can just come to your file, click on export and click for save for web legacy, and make sure optimize is checked, make sure enable color profile is checked, and you can change your quality to 80 or 70, and after that just click on save. And I'm going to just save this in my computer right now and click on save. So that's the step-by-step process on how I retouch my beauty headshots, and you can use this method to retouch your image as well. I hope you learned something for this video. If you do, make sure to give this video a like, so more people can see this video and learn from this video as well. And also, if you want to learn how to get the right figure separation blur radius, make sure to click on the video showing your score right now. I'll see you guys in my next video. Stay creative.